From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now, or learn the stuff they don't want you to know.
And we've got a little update to a story that I think's been on the minds of conspiracy realists and theorists and true crime junkies alike for many, many years. And it's something very near and dear to our compatriot Matt Frederick's heart in the form of a fantastic podcast series that he executive produced called Monster, the Zodiac Killer. And it's something that I think has been just like in the zeitgeist as long as I've been thinking about crime and serial killers, and it is that for a reason, because it's just it's remained unsolved, and it's a real mystery. There's a lot of weird inconsistencies about it, and the mode of victim choosing and all of that's really baffled detectives and investigators for many, many years. It's the subject of a fabulous David Fincher film. It's called Zodiac, which I love because it's sort of slow, but it harkens back to like a kind of a Scorsese sort of 70s kind of. It's more 70s than Scorsese. It's got a lot of like plotting kind of moments, and then punctuated by bursts of stabbings and like violence, and then it goes back to being very placid and kind of cerebral. I'm a big fan of the film, even though it's not for everybody, but if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. And a big part of the Zodiac killer was his fixation on taunting and communicating with the press and the government. Matt, you want to talk a little bit about that aspect of it? That's my favorite part, and I think what is so intriguing, one of the parts that's so intriguing about it.
Sure, yeah. The killer or alleged killer or person impersonating the killer would often call the police departments. Many times he did that. One of his favorite things to do was to send messages, handwritten messages, to the San Francisco Chronicle and a couple like local papers out there in Vallejo and a couple other towns. And he would, like you said, taunt them with written English words, but then he would also include things called ciphers, or were referred to as ciphers. They're like codes, essentially, encrypted messages that he would then further taunt these publications and the police to try and solve it, basically. I bet you can't solve it. You're not smart enough, essentially. And several have been solved in the past. One was solved very early by a teacher and her husband. I believe, forgive me if I'm incorrect there, but it was solved very early just by a couple of amateur people who were interested in it, and they spent some time on it. But there was one called the 340 cipher that for 51 years was unsolved. And it's something that, it was frustrating in making that show, just still not to have answers to it. I, was very surprised to out of the blue see that it had been solved. Ben and I were texting, and I was very skeptical. I was just like, oh yeah, okay, there's nothing new here. It's just him boasting again, being an a-hole, or this person, whoever Zodiac was or claimed to be. But there's some interesting stuff in there. And I looked in it further, Ben, and you were right in what you were saying.
Well, it is a little fascinating, and sorry, no, not to get in front of, this is a listener mail show. We are getting to a piece of listener mail at some point, but it is fascinating, and it's tantalizing in the most tragic way, because whenever we talk about these things, I want to make sure that people know we are well aware that real innocent people died. And I hate how exploitative some of that stuff can become. I want to praise Monster because it is the opposite of that. And it is very smart and very well done. I don't want to put you on the spot or blow you up, Matt, but it's true. It's not a compliment or a criticism. It's an observation. It's very well done. And the thing about this case is that at some point, there was this huge belief, correct me if I'm off base here, guys, but there was this huge belief that the Zodiac disclosed their real name or a real clue to their identity in one of these ciphers. And so that's part of why there's so much energy put into solving them, even decades later. And this,
He said as much. He said, solve this one essentially, and you'll find out who I really am. And there's this one line of code that's supposedly his name, but if you speak with the experts who've been working on this for a long time, it's almost impossible to solve for that one line of code because you don't have enough information essentially to figure out what all the characters mean. That's one of the big things with solving the original ciphers that were solved by those amateurs. There was so much there that they could just do kind of substitution and they were able to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's also funny, like, not to get too caught up in the pop culture side of it, but like, I think it's pretty clear that this case was a big influence on a lot of serial killer type fiction, especially Seven, which is David Fincher's first big, very interesting movie, because a feature of that killer was also taunting the detectives, that were on the hunt for this killer. And I think that's also probably something that even goes back to like Hitchcock and older tropes in this kind of storytelling. But this modern version of that, to me, a lot of that comes from the Zodiac. So back to the listener mail aspect of it, only to say it was a listener named Dan that just sent us a link to this article about Zodiac Killer, Code Breakers, Solve San Francisco Killer's Cipher. Just said on the off chance you guys didn't see this yet. So thanks, Dan. We had seen it and we were chatting about it, but this gave us a great opportunity to talk about it on the show outside of listener mail. So the bad news is, I don't know if it's even considered bad news, is it's not like this is some sort of game changer for the case. It's not like there was some hidden message in the cipher that is going to really crack the thing wide open to let people know who the Zodiac Killer was. It's a lot of the same kind of egotistical taunting that the killer was already doing. Would you agree? Is that fair to say, Matt?
That was my initial reaction to seeing the solution that David Oranchak came back with, who is somebody we spoke with on the podcast, by the way.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's awesome. So we'll let you decide for yourselves. Here is the full message that Oranchak posted in the metadata for a YouTube video. That's sort of like the what do you call it, Matt? I guess the scoop on this.
This is his announcement, yeah.
This is an announcement. Let's Crack the Zodiac, episode 5. I guess it's a podcast, or what is it? It's just like a YouTube channel?
It's a YouTube series.
Yeah. So right now it has 1.4 million views, approaching 1.5. And here is what it says. I hope you're having lots of fun and trying to catch me. That wasn't me on the TV show, which brings up a point about me. I'm not afraid of the gas chamber because it will send me to paradise all the sooner, because I now have enough slaves to work for me, where everyone else has nothing when they reach paradise. Keep spelling paradise with a C at the end, which is interesting.
He did that a lot.
Yeah.
Yep.
So they are afraid of death. I am not afraid because I know that my new life is. There's some weird anachronistic grammar and spellings all throughout this. Life will be an easy one in paradise death.
Yeah, yes. Interesting stuff, right? I mean, he's talked about, or at least in previous communications, Zodiac talked about gathering slaves, and his belief, at least his stated belief, that when he kills an individual, they become his slave in the afterlife. Talked about that a lot. And that was at least what he claimed. That was one of his motivations that he claimed. Again, it's hard to know because all we have are these messages that are essentially taunts, right? That it could be really what he thinks, or really what he means, or he could just be talking a bunch of stuff.
Or he might not have that line of consistency, which is something we see happen pretty often, right? People's stated motivations for doing something will change, and they don't feel like they're lying because they're already so unstable that whatever feels like the truth to them at that moment is the truth.
Very possibly. But the coolest things about this, that, on further looking at it, because I didn't see the thing about the TV show.
Mhm.
That's a huge standout. There was an incident on this show called the Jim Dunbar Show, where an attorney named Melvin Belli went on there, and they were taking calls, essentially trying to get Zodiac to call into the show. And someone called in claiming to be Zodiac, and they specifically mentioned that they were afraid, they didn't want to go to the gas chamber, essentially. So this, and the timeline matches up, by the way, for this to be sent pretty soon after that incident on the Jim Dunbar Show. So the concept here that the Zodiac is replying to that instance, saying that it's not me. I'm not afraid of the gas chamber. It wasn't me on the TV show. That is fascinating, and it further solidifies that this is the actual Zodiac.
True.
Why do that particularly in such a difficult to crack code? If you're trying to respond to something that you see as like an affront to your whole thing.
Well, in a weird way, it's an intellectual game that's being played here. There's time, like the amount of time that it would take to solve this, even if you were successful at solving it, it's going to take you a lot longer to do that. It speaks to the character that you are building as this serial killer, because really, if I learned anything about Zodiac, it's that it's a person who needed attention terribly, like craved it and needed it. And
they're the worst kind of people, even when they're not killing people.
Yeah.
Can we really quickly talk about why ciphers like this are so difficult to decode?
Sure.
Because I mean, what ended up happening, I believe, was a combination of algorithmic technology and human involvement. And we've talked about things like this on the show plenty, and they're just not easy. And I guess it's because each set of characters is generated by an individual, and so it's difficult to, there's like so many combinations and potential possibilities that it's difficult. It's like doing a brute force attack on a password or something. Like, it's not easy, but it's even more difficult than that.
Well, there are a couple of aspects here. First, I want to get back to, sorry, I should have been more clear. I want to get back to what I was saying. There's, to add to your point, Matt, because I don't want to lose it, there's also a mark of authenticity that comes through in these ciphers, which is very big, right? For the question, the remarks you're having, Noel, about the cipher, what's fascinating is not just the process of cracking it, but how, like, the questions about the typos, are they themselves an encoding error on the side of Zodiac, or are they purposefully meant to make the code more difficult? And also, process aside, one of the most amazing things, at least to me, about this is that they were able to not just crack the cipher, and this is something I want to throw to you, Matt, but they were also able to find an example of something like this cipher in a military manual from the 1950s.
Yes.
But they did that after they cracked the code, right?
Yes, but it was kind of known for a while there that it was military encryption that was being used as one of the main things. There was also a connection to military boots, a couple other connections to someone possibly being former military, in the military, or at least an enthusiast of some kind of post-use military store or something like that. Who knows? But the encryption was, this one in particular did end up going back there. And again, it's a credit to David Aranchak and a couple other guys, Sam Blake. I think it's Jarl van Eyck. That's another person from Belgium. They all worked really, really hard on this. And the encryption is crazy. The way they solved it, Noel, if I would just recommend, because I can't explain it to you right now, it's too difficult. But if you go and watch Let's Crack Zodiac episode 5 on YouTube right now, David lays out exactly what the algorithm is doing, what the human input was, like how they actually changed a couple things. They did some cribbing on their own and then had to manipulate the code itself to get to the right thing, because it's crazy. It's crazy.
Ben, your point I think is really interesting. So you're saying perhaps the Zodiac made those end typos on purpose to throw off an algorithm or to throw off like pattern recognition because it wouldn't read as a certain word anymore or a certain sequence?
I'm saying it's possible. And this is it's just one of the many things I learned from checking out Monster. So it's true. Like, that's one thing. But then the reason that stays in the realm of speculation is because we would have to some degree, gauge intent. So it could be a purposeful kind of red herring to throw or a little obstacle to bake into the labyrinth there, or it could be an honest mistake because these are pretty complex ciphers. You know what I mean? This is not Igpe Attenley.
Well, it does seem that that there was one line that was shifted over by a character, and that seems, I don't know if that was done in error. Maybe it was again another booby trap, essentially, but that could have been a mistake. And he misspelled things in his regular correspondence all the time. Whoever Zodiac was, like Christmas with 2 S's, like the Paradise thing was spelled with a C a ton, when he's actually writing it out. So, misspelling I think is a common thing for whoever this person was, and either being a terrible speller or doing it on purpose, I don't know. A lot of the experts pointed to the belief that he was doing it on purpose. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, and the FBI has fully acknowledged this cracking of the code and made a statement, the San Francisco division of the FBI. The FBI is aware that a cipher attributed to the Zodiac Killer was recently solved by private citizens. The Zodiac Killer case remains on an ongoing investigation for the FBI San Francisco division and our local law enforcement partners. The Zodiac Killer terrorized multiple communities across Northern California, and even though decades have gone by, we continue to seek justice for the victims of these brutal crimes. Due to the ongoing nature of the investigation and out of respect for the victims and their families, we will not be providing further comment at this time.
Yep. Yeah. It's true. It's an ongoing case. And if you try and talk to the San Francisco Police Department at the Hall of Justice, they're just like, nah, we can't talk about it. Sorry. And then you pester them for a long time and they're like, nah.
Because there's a possibility, that there are other murders that might eventually be tied in with it. It might be that person's work. And there's, of course, the possibility that, sorry, just to finish.
No, please, of course.
There's the possibility that person may still somehow be alive.
There's a possibility.
But it's like not a major possibility, right?
But it's cool because there is, right? I mean, we can't discount it. A lot of the major suspects, or the major people who would have been considered suspects, have passed already. Just so you guys know, right before this recording, I talked to Michael Butterfield, our Zodiac expert that we talked to for Monster, the Zodiac Killer, and he had just spoken with David Aranchak, and he did some great writing on ZodiacKillerFacts.com. There's a huge article on there where he goes over a lot of the details. And if anybody's interested, you can basically click through links for a long time on that and see everything you'd want to find out about it. And big shout out to Michael Butterfield for always being right on the money with his writing and research.
Cool. But yeah, I mean, this obviously goes without saying, but there is no statute of limitations on murder. So the SFPD but also the FBI will continue to not talk about this until there's a break in the case. And even if that person is dead, they will continue. I mean, I think that's fascinating. That aspect of detective work and law enforcement, that doggedness that requires, you understand why they want to check off cases and close cases and pin things on people, because otherwise it's just out there, and everybody wants closure.
Oh yeah. No, you're so right. Can I just say one more thing, you guys? In the actual written out portion that was solved there by Ranchak and the fellows, they had to transpose the characters before they actually then tried to solve it. So there's a multi-step way to solve this thing. They found that "life is" was written out on the top right-hand side of the thing. And they just excluded that from the rest of the solve that they put through for the cipher. And David's initial concept was to put it after that my new, and then they just inserted life is there. I think that's incorrect.
Oh.
I think it should say, I am not afraid because I know that my new, and then it would go to the next line, life will be an easy one in paradise. Then that life is would be inserted there where it is. That's the end. Life will be an easy one in paradise. New line, life is death. That's, I think, what it would. That's
yeah,
I think what it would say.
Because that is what is it now? It's just is death, right?
It says that my new life is life will be an easy one in paradise death.
In paradise death. That's
Yeah.
right. I thought it said, but I remember it feeling anachronistic there at the end, like there was something missing. That's good, man.
He would do that all the time. And the other ones that were solved, it felt like that's not the end of a sentence. That's like a whole new thought, and he would just put them in weird places. So, just a concept. I may be wrong.
No, that makes a lot of sense to me, and kudos to the team behind this for cracking it, and obviously fascinating to a lot of people that have been following this case for so long. And who knows, maybe there could be more breaks.